So good morning everyone and welcome back to the class on smart materials and structures. So we were dealing with respect to module 3. So can anyone let me know what was the topic what we were discussing in the last class quickly? Either Harsha or Dhanush, any one of you.
Ma'am, it was regarding transmission characteristics, ma'am, and attenuation, dispersion, then the performance of a fiber, then it was related to three modes of losses, ma'am. One is material absorption, then one more is scattering, and one more is bending losses, ma'am.
Yeah. So we dealt about basically the transmission characteristics, and we also studied about the various mechanisms which are involved in analyzing how the losses come into picture while transferring the signal or the light rays from the input pulse to that of output. So we also dealt finally about totally the losses in fiber is due to material absorption. It could be either due to scattering, and in scattering it could be either the linear or non-linear effects. And when it comes into bending, where the incident ray is equal to that of the reflected ray, it could be the losses either due to macro bends or the micro bends, which could come with respect to the geometry of the optical fiber what we are using. So we had covered about one part of the transmission characteristics. So when we went on in the beginning related to the transmission characteristics, I told that these characteristics basically depend upon two factors. One is the attenuation, another one is the dispersion. So related to the attenuation, all the transmission losses and its mechanism we have dealt about. Now it is a time to focus on dispersion. I told you that in dispersion, you will get a variation in the bandwidth. So the bandwidth of the input pulse will be different and the bandwidth of the output pulse will be different. That is again due to the losses by means of dispersion. So what that is exactly, we will go in depth in today's class. So with respect to this background and prerequisite, let us start with respect to the dispersion phenomena in the transmission characteristics. So there I told you that the losses are due to widening of the bandwidth of the pulse. So when you compare, this is the input pulse and this is the output pulse. So there is an enhancement in the bandwidth. What is the reason? That is a thing due to the dispersion phenomena. So due to dispersion, the broadening of the pulses comes into picture. Why does it happen? You should analyze. Okay, suppose if you consider an optical fiber with a ray of light passing through it, right? So I told that it will be having the incident ray as well as the reflected ray. So now these two parameters plays a vital role in getting the bandwidth broadened. Why? That you have to think about. It mainly depends upon the directions of the axial ray and the critical angle. So critical angle is due to the reflected ray. So I told you the incident ray, the reflected ray. If the reflected ray is equal to the critical angle, then it will be reflected across the surface of the core. And if the incident ray is lesser than that of the reflected ray, so then it gets reflected in the other direction in our this one cladding area. So these two factors now plays an vital role. So what you have to understand is this broadening is mainly due to the direction of the axial ray and the critical angle. So always the axial ray takes the shortest route. That happens when the incident ray is lesser than that of the reflected ray. So when the incident ray is lesser than that of the reflected ray, so what happens is it takes the shortest route. So when it takes the shortest route, it arrives at the far end faster. So this is the incident ray. So it arrives in the other end in a very faster way. But if the critical angle comes into picture, so then it takes a broader inclination of the angle. In that reason, due to that purpose, it results in broadening of the pulse across the output. One thing you have to keep in mind, there are three parameters. One is the incident ray, the reflected ray, and the critical angle what we get. If the incident ray is lesser, then the refracted ray will be higher and it scatters across the cladder. So that is not happening here. Incident ray is equal to reflected ray, and hence it gets reflecting within the core or the denser media. But during the inclination, if the axial ray takes the shortest distance, so this is 1 and this is 1, so the distance between the two axial ray is a shorter distance, so then it easily gets reflected and comes to the other end. This also easily gets reflected and comes to the other end. But if the axial rays is one at this position and other one is at this position, then the gap between these two will be higher. Even though it transfers and comes to the output where the output pulse has to reach, due to the distance between the axial rays, what happens is it results in enhancement of the bandwidth, and hence the bandwidth at the input pulse will not be equal to the bandwidth at the output pulse. It results in broadening of the pulse. So this happens if there is a longer distance between the axial rays. If it travels a shorter distance, then the bandwidth remains the same. This is about the pulse broadening related to the dispersion phenomena, why the bandwidth get extended. So this is the simple concept what we have to understand before going into the dispersion. Hope the broadening concept, the pulse broadening concept is clear. Any doubts in this? Okay, so if you are thorough with the pulse broadening, so then we can go for the dispersion phenomena. So in dispersion phenomena, now you know that the losses comes into the picture due to the variation in the bandwidth. So how this variation in the bandwidth comes? What are the constraints or what are the limits for the bandwidth that you have to understand? So usually when we listen to the word dispersion, the thing which should come into your mind is it is nothing but the spreading of the light pulses. The light pulses get spreaded due to the pulse broadening. So due to the pulse broadening, there will be change in the bandwidth. So you have to put some constraints, some limiting factor to the bandwidth such that the bandwidth of the input pulse will be equal to the bandwidth of the output pulse. So with this concept, you can see here the dispersion could be of three types. One is of multi-mode dispersion, second is material dispersion, and the third one is the waveguide dispersion. So the dispersion could happen due to at the material level of the optical fiber what we are using, or the dispersion could happen if it is a multi-mode. You know, in optical fiber, the light rays could be traversed either due to single mode or through the multi-mode. If you have the multi-mode traverse of the light signals, and in that case, if dispersion is occurring, so that type of dispersion is due to the multi-mode dispersion. And if the dispersion is happening, means if the broadening of the pulse is happening, if the bandwidth of the pulse is increasing due to material of the optical fiber what you have used, so then it is under material dispersion. Similarly, if it is due to the waveguide, if the dispersion is coming due to the waveguide phenomena, so then we call that to be as the waveguide dispersion. So these are the three important types of dispersion which can come into picture. So in this, the most commonly type of dispersion which usually occur are the intermodal dispersion. In short, it is called as MMF. Or else it could be intra. One could be inter. Another one is a intra. So, or it could be intra-chromatic dispersion. So in intra-chromatic dispersion, you have two types. One is the material dispersion and the waveguide. So these two, what I told, material dispersion and waveguide directly come under the classification of intramodal chromatic dispersion. So this is in short called as SMF. If it is intramodal dispersion, then it is called as MMF. So this multimode comes under this category. The second and third classification comes under SMF. So this thing you have to keep in mind, how the classification of the dispersion comes into picture. And we were speaking about the pulse broadening, right, with respect to the bandwidth. So we are coming back to that concept. Here, when we speak about the intramodal dispersion, we are focusing about the pulse broadening. One thing you have to keep in mind is pulse broadening always varies linearly with respect to the distance. What is the distance through which the optical fiber is being used to traverse the light signals from one end to the other? The distance is always referred by the letter Z. So broadening of the pulse mainly depends upon the distance. So what is the distance through which the light rays are been moving from one end to other? Is it very long or medium? Yeah, minimum. So based on that, it results in broadening of the pulse or the bandwidth. So that is being told. So pulse broadens linearly with respect to the distance, so that maximum bandwidth reduces inversely with the distance. Since it varies with respect to distance, we can claim that the bandwidth will reduce inversely to that of the distance traveled. It is not directly related, it is inversely related to the distance through which the optical light rays are traveling. The pulses vary linearly to the distance, and as a result, the bandwidth, the maximum bandwidth, will reduce to the reciprocal of the distance traversed. So this one thing you have to keep in mind. But the bandwidth distance, what we figure out, will be constant for a particular fiber optic what you are using. So different type of optical fibers are developed in today's scenario based on the requirement. A different class of materials are there to develop this optical fiber. We usually add on some dopants to make that a better performed optical fiber. So each and every optical fiber will be associated with some bandwidth correlated with that of the distance with what the light will be traveled. But this bandwidth and distance value will be constant for that particular fiber, irrespective of what application you are using. So basically, with that aspect, you have to see that we have two parameters associated with the bandwidth. So bandwidth length products. So based on the bandwidth and its distance, we figure out the optical fibers into two products. One is of multi-mode fiber, another one is a single mode fiber. This classification of the fiber optics we have done already. In single mode, you will be having only single ray of light coming from input to that of the output. Whereas in multi-mode, you will be having n number of light rays which will be inclining and moving from one end to the other. If you are using a multi-mode optical fiber, then the bandwidth distance what you can use should be nearly 220 megahertz kilometer if it is multi-mode fiber. But wherein if you are using an optical fiber for single mode type, then the bandwidth distance which has to be held constant is 100 gigahertz kilometer. So this is the bandwidth length products which are readily available in the market. So you have to think whether you are using for single mode or multi-mode. If you are going for communication application, telecommunication, it is always preferable to go with single mode fiber. If that is the case, you should select the bandwidth length product as 100 gigahertz kilometer. So this is a constant value which will be there for that particular type of optical fiber for lifelong. So you have to classify the optical fiber selection based on the bandwidth distance, and this bandwidth distance will remain the same throughout. So this limit will be always associated. You cannot cross 20 megahertz kilometer for multi-mode fiber, and you cannot cross 100 gigahertz kilometer for single mode fiber, and hence we are putting some restriction on the bandwidth length. So this is nothing but the bandwidth limit. So this bandwidth limit should be within the range as informed when we are associated with intramodal dispersion. So intramodal dispersion we studied here. It could be either multi-mode or single mode. If it is allowing multi-mode means it obviously allows a single mode also. So whenever if you need a multi-mode or a single mode dispersion, we go with intramodal dispersion. And in intramodal dispersion, this is the limit of the bandwidth what one has to follow. So this is for single mode and this is for multi-mode. But in this constraint of bandwidth, one thing you have to keep in mind, so every mode can travel at different speed as per the requirement. So you will be not putting any constraint on it. So it has freedom to move at any speed. Only thing, the bandwidth will be limited. So it can travel at any speed as per the requirement. So this is about the intra-modal dispersion, what we dealt about. So next is also called as intramodal. So we have few points before going to intra. So in intermodal dispersion, it is also called to be as a modal dispersion, I told you. So what could be the dimensions of the optical fiber which is best suitable? So here, in case of intermodal dispersion, we should see that the diameter of the core is smaller so that we can get a good feasible incident ray and reflected ray, which both will be equal. It gets reflected within the core, and the huge amount of light rays could be traversed from one end to the other without any losses. So always it is preferable to have a diameter of a smaller core. And if you are using a graded index fiber, we have studied the classification of the optical fiber based on incident rays also. So in that we have studied what is graded index fiber. So if you are using a graded index fiber, so the factor, the incident ray factor, what we are using should be less than 100. So this index factor in graded index fiber should be always less than equal to 100. And if you are using a single mode fiber, which is called as SMF, is mainly restricted for only one mode of light rays, means it can allow to travel a light ray of a particular wavelength only. And the light rays what you are selecting of a particular wavelength should be always greater than that of the cutoff wavelength. So every light will be having a wavelength and a cutoff wavelength and a range of wavelength through which you can traverse a single ray of light. So the light what you're selecting to travel in a single mode should have its value of wavelength always greater than that of the cutoff wavelength. So these are some constraints what you have to follow when you are going for an intermodal dispersion. We are focusing both multimodal and single modal here because intermodal dispersion shows the categories for both the aspects, the single mode and the multi-mode. So if you have a multi-mode dispersion, then usually what happens is it dominates some points in terms of dispersion phenomena, but it can be ignored, they say. Why this happens is you will be having an what we say, if we go back to the diagram here, here you can see, if you have n number of rays which is passing through the intersection, then it is called as not a single mode, it is a multi-mode. So when you have a multi-mode, so some amount of the broadening of the pulses which is coming across through each ray will be neglected. It is not that all will be focused, because you have n number of rays which are incident and reflected. So some rays of light will be dominating and some will not. So the rays of light which is not dominating will be ignored in case of dispersion. If we go back to the diagram here, you can see the small incident rays and an incident ray which is inclined to an huger angle. So it comes here and gets reflected. This comes here and gets reflected. And in between you have small rays of light which is incidented and reflected. So the variation across these rays with respect to pulse broadening could not be evaluated because there are a huge lot of rays. Only the main incident rays and reflected rays will be considered for analyzing the pulse broadening effect in case of dispersion. And hence, the light rays which are not dominant will not be considered for the dispersion and it could be ignored. So that is told. But in case of single mode, you have only single ray of light which is passing through. So the wavelength of that particular light will be surely considered for the dispersion phenomena, because you don't have the light rays which is coming off higher wavelength and the smaller wavelength. It is only one type of light rays which is passing through. But whereas in multi-mode, you'll be having different rays of light of different wavelength which is coming. So wavelength which is lesser than that of the cutoff wavelength would be ignored directly. So we will be selecting only the wavelength of the lights which is greater than cutoff wavelength in multi-mode for the analysis of the dispersion. So this is what the meaning of the intermodal dispersion phenomena. I hope it is clear, everyone. Any doubts in this? Are you people there? Any doubts?
No, ma'am.
Yeah. So before going to intra, so let us just speak about the model dispersion. So here model dispersion we are taking with respect to the graded index fibers. In graded index fibers, you know that you will be not having single mode, it will be a multi-mode rays of light which come in and gets reflected within the core. So we have studied the index profile for graded index also. So this will be the core and this will be the cladder. So this will be the what we call the index value N1 for the core, and this is the index value N2 for the cladder. And this is a refractive index phenomena N into R, which goes on depending upon the axial ray, how it is followed. So the axial ray will be along the reference axis. And then you will be having the rays of light which is incident here across the axial ray, and if the incident ray is equal to the reflected ray, so then it gets reflected back within the core. If the incident ray is very less, angle of incident is very less, then it gets reflected back to the cladder, and as a result of it, it gets scattered. It won't get reflected back within the core. And here we can observe that all the rays of light which is incident are equal and not lesser than that of, and not a very small value. And hence it gets reflected back within the core element, core here of the optical fiber. So with reduced amount of loss, the light is traversed from one end to that of the other. So this is explaining you the multi-mode graded index fiber. So by looking into the diagram only, you can tell whether it is in single mode or in multi-moded index fiber. So to achieve this type of phenomena of incident rays equally converted into reflected ray, you should design the core in such a way that you will get different refractive index layers. So you have different inductive reflected layers here. So you have 4 rays with different refractive angle, and it is getting reflected within the core beautifully without any loss of light. So for that, you should see that the diameter of the core is designed in such a way that there is no losses of light in transversing from one end to that of the other. And this beam of light which is traveling depends upon what is the length of the optical fiber you are designed and what is the highest velocity with which the beam of light can travel. So what is the velocity with which the light rays can travel for the maximum distance, and what is the shortest distance the light rays can travel, and for the shortest distance what should be the lowest velocity. You cannot design a slowest velocity for a longer distance. So in a very slow motion, if it starts propagating, then it is very difficult to convert the input pulse into the output pulse without any loss. If it is a longer distance, obviously it should travel with little bit higher velocity. So then it can incident and reflect, incident and reflect, incident and reflect without any losses and reach the output pulse. If it is a shorter distance, then you have to figure out what is the minimum velocity needed so that the incident light rays could be reflected back within the core without any loss and reach the output terminal for the output pulse without any loss. So these values have to be figured out properly. Means you have to optimize by trial and error during designing of an optical fiber. So if it is designed properly, keeping all aspects in mind, the geometry of the core, the velocity which is needed for short distance travel and the velocity which is needed for long distance travel, so then you can provide a beautiful solution for transformation of the light rays from one end to the other, irrespective of any losses. Okay, so all these things you have to keep in mind, and if you design with respect to that, then the losses could be reduced. So this we have just explained by taking an example of graded index fiber. Hope now the intermodal dispersion phenomena is understood. If it is so, we can move for further. Any doubts related to this? Any doubts? Okay. So next we move on for intramodal dispersion. So in intramodal dispersion, I told that this dispersion occurs either due to material dispersion or waveguide. Material dispersion mainly depends upon the material through which the optical fiber is manufactured. And the waveguide, it mainly depends upon the wavelength of the light which has been traveled. If it is above the cutoff ratio, what happens? If it is below the cutoff ratio of the wavelength, what happens? That you have to analyze to reduce the losses. So with that background, we are now starting with intramodal dispersion. So this intramodal dispersion occurs mainly due to different propagations. What do you mean by different propagations? You'll be having light rays of different wavelength. So some light of a particular wavelength can travel fast. Some might result in a delay in the movement due to different wavelength. I told you that if the wavelength of light is lesser than that of the cutoff wavelength, for every optical fiber will be having a cutoff wavelength. So there will be a constraint. If the wavelength of light is lesser than this, then it won't be feasible enough to travel the light within the optical fiber. So you should select the light rays in such a way that the wavelength of that light will be more than that of the cutoff wavelength. So that you have to think about, because every light has a specific wavelength and it will move with respect to its own speed, and it results in some delays also because you have different light of different wavelength. Okay, so this could happen in case of a single mode as well. So this type of variation of different wavelength of light usually comes into picture either due to the reason of material dispersion or the waveguide dispersion. So in this, the losses comes into picture. So you have to see that the light sources, what you are using, have a finite spectral width. So you cannot blindly use any type of light, any type of illumination lights. You should be specific whether using an LED bulb or a laser. If you use a laser as a source of light or an LED as a source of light, then you will have a specific finite spectral width of the light rays which has been passing through with a tolerance limit, plus or minus variation in the lambda. So you can constrain, this is the allowance what you can consider to get a specific light rays of specific wavelength. So this you can stick on with the upper and the lower limit only if you are using with either the laser or the LED as a light source. If you use a normal light, so then you can have the different light rays of different wavelength, so then it will be very difficult for us to focus because it results in the causes of losses either due to variation in the waveguide dispersion. And hence you should keep in mind, you should use the light source as either LED or the laser. So these two have a proper channel of constraining the set of light rays going in at least a normal wavelength with a variation of small wavelength within the range of plus or minus lambda, okay, delta lambda. So this is a change in the lambda which is acceptable. Why we are stressing on this? Because each spectral component of the pulse, which travels at a different length period of time, always results in yielding for pulse broadening. So here you can see the broadband of the light rays in the input pulse. So when it travels for some longer period of time, so finally we can see that you haven't changed in the dispersion of the light rays. So this is the initial pulse, and then it results in the movement from one to the other, from here to the other. So finally the pulse has moved from this point to that of this. So this was the first step, yellow is the second step, and blue is the third step. And due to this variation of the dispersion, it results in enhancement of the bandwidth from this point to this point. And hence, this happens if you don't have a peculiar source of light with constrained variation in the wavelength. If the bandwidth is not limited with the allowance value, so it easily get traversed in a long distance with the broadening of the pulse. If you use a laser, yeah, LED, it restricts the wavelength dispersion, and hence you can figure out the broadband input pulse similar to that of the broadband output pulse. So if that is not considered, so then losses will come into picture due to material dispersion or waveguide dispersion, and it results in broadening of the pulse from this end to this. And hence you should keep in mind that suppose for optical fiber we use silicon oxide, right? So you have to check what is the absorption, what is the material dispersion phenomena of silicon oxide, whether it will be able to disperse some of the wavelength through its material, what we are selecting. That one thing you have to consider. Another thing is a waveguide dispersion. If you are not using a proper source of light, so then even though the material what you have selected is best, even though the geometry of the optical fiber is best, if the source of light what you are using is not good enough, it is not either the laser or LED, so then it results in the broadening of the pulse here. So by looking into the sketch, we can see that whether the light source used is having a proper spectral width or not. Only the spectral width constraint is achieved in an laser and an LED. So you have to see that to overcome this intramodal dispersion, also the light source plays an vital role. So this is about the dispersion phenomena, okay, related to inter and intramodal dispersion. So after this, so we have cleared both the type of dispersion phenomena, so intermodal and the intramodal. Hope this is clear. Any doubts in this? Can I move further? Yeah, so this is about the dispersion phenomena. So then in last to last class, we have dealt about Bragg grating sensors. I told you that we have different types of sensors associated with optical fiber, and which was a very common one we have discussed already, which is the Bragg grating sensor and light interferometry. So those two we have studied already. But why I am showing this slide is basically there is a type of classification of the optical fibers with respect to some constraints. So I just wanted to figure out these four. So if it is focusing with respect to a particular point, so then it is said to be as a point sensor. So this what we say the Bragg grating sensor, what we have studied, comes under the classification of point sensor. So along with that, we have one more sensor called as Fabry-Perot sensor. So this is also an example for point sensor. We have studied fiber Bragg grating sensor. We need to study this Fabry-Perot sensor. So we'll do it in today's class. So the other type of classification is integrated sensor. So here it is not specific to a particular point. It is due to the combination and integration of the light rays into a single value, and hence it is called to be as an integrated sensor. In that, an example for it is a deformation sensor. You should be knowing the knowledge about this, and hence I'm telling you. And next is quasi-distributed or multiplex sensor level it is. For that, an example is multiplexed FBG, we call it as. Okay, so it is multiplex fiber Bragg grating sensor. Here in point sensor, we have studied only single fiber Bragg grating sensor. When it comes for multiplex sensor, we use the same Bragg grating sensor at multiplex level, and hence it is called multiplex fiber Bragg grating sensor. If we are using the optical fiber sensor for distribution application, so then it is called as a distributed sensor. You are distributing the light rays incident on it to different channel by the scattering phenomena. It could be either intrinsic or extrinsic. In that case, some examples are either it could be system based on Rayleigh, Raman, Brilloni scattering. I told you the scattering phenomena, so it is related to the scattering aspect. So if they ask you to speak about the type of sensors in optical fiber, you can just show the huge classification, how the sensors are classified into, and you can explain few sensors which are commonly used. It could be either the fiber Bragg grating sensor, light interferometry, or an Fabry-Perot sensor. So this was needed, which was missing in last to last class. So I just wanted to show you. So now we are coming for the other type of point sensor, which is Fabry-Perot sensor. So in Fabry-Perot sensor also, we have different classifications. So in Fabry-Perot sensor, if it is a pressure based, then we call this as a Fabry-Perot sensor related to the pressure aspect. And also, you can have this Fabry-Perot sensor for, just a second. If you are using the fibers of more stiffness, so then it is called a stiff fiber Fabry-Perot sensor. So this is the second type. And third type is if you are using this Fabry-Perot cavity sensor for either the strain or force measurement, then you call that as a Fabry-Perot cavity sensor, which is associated for strain or force measurement. And one more thing, if you want to be specific to identify the position of a particular device and to see how it is moving from one position to other, so then we go up with the Fabry-Perot cavity sensor based on the position aspects. So these are the four categories of Fabry-Perot cavity sensor we have basically. So with this aspect, you can now see that in any Fabry-Perot sensor, you will be having. So this is the sketch for the pressure sensor type. So here you can see that this is the core and this is the cladder, right? So this will be the mirror, what you'll be having here. So you'll be having mirror 2 over here and this mirror 1 over here. So mirror 1 and mirror 2 will be parallel. So this mirror 2 acts as a diaphragm and mirror 1 will be of an dielectric metal type. Since it is a pressure sensor, the pressure will be subjected across the diaphragm. So diaphragm works, even in a human body, we have a diaphragm. So when we inhale and exhale air, the diaphragm will move up and down. Similarly, here when this pressure is subjected, this diaphragm could be able to move in and out based on the amount of pressure applied. So based on the pressure applied, then if you put an amount of light rays incidented into the core, so then it will be reflected back. Okay, so here you have to understand how does it reflect back, in what variation, and what will be the delay in reflecting the light rays. And usually when you have a core and a cladder, and if you have clamped with a mirror, and if you have an air gap between these two, how the variation in pressure will be controlled. All these aspects you have to understand. So for that, what you have to understand is we have a pair of parallel mirrors. So these are the two parallel mirrors, mirror 1 and mirror 2. It will be straight initially. When you apply the pressure, then it moves in. So when it moves in, then the amount of air gap between the two mirrors will be reduced. But you have two parallel mirror connections. What you have to understand. So you have pair of parallel mirrors. It is separated by an air gap, which is L suffix S. So the cavity which has been developed across the air gap here is called to be as Fabry-Perot cavity or sensing interferometer. So this cavity will help in sensing the required parameters when you have the variation with respect to the pressure. So the mirror one, what we called, is a semi-reflective mirror. So in semi-reflective mirror, you'll be having a dielectric layer deposited across the other end of the optical fiber. So this is the optical fiber, right? So here you will be having an dielectric material which will be coated in front of the mirror one across the core. And mirror two, across mirror 2, a diaphragm will be mounted. So here you are mounting an dielectric material across mirror 1, and across mirror 2 you are coating a diaphragm element which can compress and extend. Okay, so both the mirrors are coated with one specific layer. One is the dielectric layer, another one is the diaphragm has been mounted. So this pressure variation is measured due to the changes in between the mirror 1 and mirror 2. Because these two are located in between a specific gap. So this air gap will help in analyzing the variation in the pressure across the mirror 1 and mirror 2. And this pressure gap changes. Okay, so L suffix S is the air gap. So when the diaphragm moves in, the air gap will reduce. When the diaphragm move out and it remains parallel to the mirror 1, then the air gap will be more. So there will be variation in L suffix S, which is nothing but the air gap between the mirror 1 and the mirror 2. So this you have to understand. So when an incident light is been incidented in the optical fiber, what happens is the cavity is partially reflected at the first mirror. So when a rays of light is made to pass through, so you have the mirror 1 here and you have a dielectric material. So this ray of light which has been passed through the optical fiber will be reflected across the mirror 1. Okay, and it will not be fully reflected, it will be partially reflected. Why? Because you have the mirror 1 which is a semi-reflective mirror. It is not a totally reflective mirror, and hence the optical rays of light which is made to pass through the core will be partially reflected in the mirror 1. This is mirror 1. So the rays of light, the optical rays of light which is passing through the mirror will be partially reflected. If you have a set of light rays passing, so only half, the 50% of it will be reflected back, because you have a partial mirror here, not a full reflective mirror. So that you have to keep in mind. So remaining light, what happens to the remaining light? So the remaining light is transmitted further and it gets reflected in the second mirror. That is the reason why we are using two mirrors. One is the partial reflecting mirror, the second one is the fully reflecting mirror. So the partial reflecting mirror, since it is used in mirror 1, 50% of the light rays is reflected back by the mirror 1. So remaining part of the rays which was not reflected through the mirror 1 will be made to pass through the mirror 2. Since mirror 2 is a fully reflective mirror, it takes the remaining part of the light rays and it gets reflected. But there is a delay in time. So this is reflected at faster rate, and the remaining part it has to reach the mirror 2, right? So it takes some time to reach mirror 2 and then it gets reflected. And hence there will be a time delay in reflecting the remaining part of the light rays. Even though you have a single amount of light rays passing through the mirror here, since it is a partial reflective mirror, it reflects 50% of the light rays, and remaining 50% of the light rays is been reflected back by the mirror 2, and due to this there is a delay in time. So the time delay is measured by 2 suffix ls. So this air gap will be considered, the distance from here till here you should know, right? So 2 suffix 2 into ls, divided by the letter C. So this will provide you the time delay factor. So this is for the second pulse. What is the time required? So any variation in the pressure will reduces the value of LS. So LS could be higher or lesser depending upon the pressure which has been applied over here. So based on that, you will get the variation in the pressure, and hence the gap between the pulses also gets varied, and hence the time required for the 50% of the light rays to come also can vary. So this is how the incident light rays will be reflected back if you have two mirror phenomenon, and this could be used to sense the variation in the pressure. So this type of sensor could be used very well where you want to analyze what is the variation in the pressure for a particular application. In that way, this will be very feasible. So this is about the Fabry-Perot sensor for the pressure base. So here, you know, the pulses are always fed to the interferometer to see the modulation and interference. Pulses are nothing but the light rays are usually fed into this type of optical fiber to see the modulation and how the interference actually comes into picture. So this interference can be a single mode pulse or it could be a multi-mode pulse, and it mainly depends what is the air gap between the two mirrors. So you should see that the gap between the two mirrors in such a way that it should not overlap. So this is the first 50% of light rays reflected back, and if the gap is very less, it could come and overlap to the first reflected ray. You should see that the gap is in such a way it will not overlap. We can visualize both the part of the reflected rays which has been reflected. So this is one thing you have to keep in mind. So if you use this concept, this type of Fabry-Perot sensor could be used as a transducer. Transducer is nothing but an application where you are using this type of sensor in transducer. Why you use transducers? Basically, here we can use to measure the temperature, the displacement, the strain or force, anything as per the requirement. So this type of Fabry-Perot sensor could be used in transducer to measure various phenomena. It could be like temperature, displacement, strain, force, pressure, yeah, whatever. If you use Fabry-Perot sensor for temperature application, so then you have to specify Fabry-Perot sensor for temperature variation. If you are using the sensor for displacement, then you have to show it you are using for displacement phenomena. If you want to measure only the strain, to measure the strain, you should subject some load into the given device. So then the deformation, the displacement and the strain induced in the material could be sensed by using this Fabry-Perot sensor. So this type of sensor could be used for measurement of force also. And also the pressure we have analyzed right now. So these are the different classifications of Fabry-Perot sensors which are available, right? So you can go through it. The same thing, how it gets reflected is been explained over here. Okay, so I will go back to the slide little bit later. So here you can see the Fabry-Perot sensor, what I had told you for different application, like for force measurement, strain, pressure, temperature, displacement, it could be of either of the one. So one is the intrinsic type and other one is the extrinsic type. In intrinsic type, what happens that you will be having a core, and above the core you will be having a cladder. But here, the cladder is not considered throughout the length here. That you have to understand. So this is the core fiber and this is the cladder which is constrained to some specific dimensions, right? Because you are focusing here two mirrors. One is a mirror which is partially reflective and other is a mirror which is fully reflective. So you should be keeping these two mirrors across a specific length so that the required air gap between the two mirrors are obtained, so that you can help in understanding the variation across the pressure. So you will not be using the cladder for the entire length. This is about the intrinsic type. In case of extrinsic type, what happens is You will be having a core, and you will be, yeah, this is the core of the input fiber, and then you will be using an fiber fixation. So you'll be using an fiber fixation. So this fixation helps to connect to an capillary tube here. Okay, so after that, instead of having an cladder here, you'll be having a reflecting fiber. So you have one input fiber and one reflecting fiber. Means you're making this arrangement with respect to external phenomena. You're not making any additional changes within the internal surface of the optical fiber. If you make the changes within the internal surface of the optical fiber, then you call that as an intrinsic type, which is called as one-arm interferometer. Here you're adding extra attachments to it, like you're adding an fiber fixation, you're adding an capillary tube, and you're taking an extra reflective fiber instead of the cladder here. And hence it is the extra arrangement what we are making for Fabry-Perot sensor, and hence this classification comes with respect to the extrinsic type of Fabry-Perot sensor. So this is what you have to understand with respect to the Fabry-Perot sensor. Okay, and I told you that all these variations happens with respect to the air gap what you have between the mirrors. So we explained with respect to the partial reflective mirror and fully reflective mirror in case of intrinsic. So now we haven't studied what happens in case of extrinsic type. So in extrinsic type, I have just magnified this part here. So you will be having the input fiber and the reflecting fiber. So this is your input fiber and this is the reflecting fiber. So in this input fiber, you will be having a core here, and this will act as a cladder. And in reflecting fiber also, you will be having a core and you will be having a cladder. So the light rays here from the launching fiber will be made to pass through the reflecting fiber, and the light rays from the reflecting fiber will be passed on through the launching thing, and as both gets reflected, right? So this incident light rays and the reflected light rays from launching fiber to the reflecting fiber will be made to pass through the capillary arrangement what you have. So you have a capillary here which has been connected with the help of fiber fixation, right? So this capillary media will help us to observe the multiple reflections which is happening. So the reflections are happening from launching fiber to reflecting fiber, and again the reflections are happening from the reflecting fiber to the launching fiber. So the light rays are reflecting. This is the incident ray and it gets reflecting back. So this is the incident ray and it gets reflecting back. So all the light rays are reflecting back within the capillary. It is not moving outside, and it is the scattering which has been happening. Then it results in the losses. There is no loss as such because all the reflection has been happening within the given media, and hence it helps in sensing the variation with reflection is been happening within the given media, and hence it helps in sensing the variation either with respect to temperature or pressure depending upon what applications we are using. So this is about the characteristics of Fabry-Perot sensor, and it could be used for many types, as I told you, for temperature measurement, pressure, distance, strain measurement, all the parameters, and I've explained you the working phenomena also. So for both the intrinsic type and the eccentric type. And if they ask you to refer and explain for any signal, how does it vary? So it has been shown here, but actually this is not in a syllabus, just for your understanding, right? I have just shown it. Okay, so after this, you are about to study only one key concept here. If it is for position sensor, all the process and the operation is similar to what I told you, right? I have explained you the working principle of the Fabry-Perot cavity sensor. How does it operate for pressure sensor based? And I have explained you for intrinsic and the eccentric. Only thing you should understand how the light rays gets reflected. So that part I have shown you in a simple concept here. So if you understand that, this is more than enough. All other type of classifications I have told you. So here, I'll just explain this slide and leave you. So if it is a position sensor, if obviously we are referring all these type of sensors under the classification of position sensor. I told you in the very long back, if you go back here for the classification, you can see that Fabry-Perot sensor is under the classification of point sensor, right? The same thing here. You have to just understand how does it connecting. Okay, so this slide, you be careful, you understand. So you'll be having the reflection of light rays. So here we specify that as a reflection polarization. Why polarization is coming into picture? So you can see that you have the incident ray. So the light rays which is passed through the core could be reflected. So the light rays which gets incident on the given core will be an unpolarized light. So when it gets reflected, it will be a polarized one. So it is a reflected ray, it is a polarized one, and the incident ray will not be a polarized one. So the angle of inclination for incident ray is theta I, and this is for reflected ray. You can measure, right? So if it is not fully polarized, if it is fully polarized, it gets reflected back to an other media which is lighter than that of the core. So this will be the cladder. It gets reflected. If the reflected ray is slightly polarized, so then it gets reflected within the core. So then the amount of losses will be less. So that you have to understand. If it is fully polarized, it gets reflected back. If it is partially polarized, it gets reflected in. So this is called as a reflection polarization. So here the reflexivity will be always different for different light. Every light will not have the equal value of reflexivity. Some might get reflected with respect to slightly polarized value. Some might get reflected with fully polarized value. So you have to see what is the reflexivity of the light rays what you are using. If it is called as p polarized, if the polarization in the plane of incidence, if the polarization is taking place in the plane of incidence, so this is a plane in which the light rays has been incidented. If in the same plane the light has been reflected back, then we say it as an p polarized. So this is a common plane. So in this plane the light rays has been incident, and in the same plane the light rays has been reflected. That shows that the total unpolarized light is now converted into an polarized one. If the incident ray gets reflected in an other plane, so then it results in S polarized. What is S polarized? S polarized is nothing but the slightly polarized. Okay, so this is a different plane. It is not the same plane in which the light has been incident. Since the reflected rays of light is not lying on the same plane in which the light rays has been incident, then it will not be fully polarized. It will be only slightly polarized. If the light rays was reflected along the same plane, so then it will be fully polarized. But you should see that the angle between these two will be exactly 90 degree. Okay, so this has been also shown. So after that, you should know only one word, what is called as Brewster's angle. So what is Brewster's angle? Brewster's angle is the incident angle when a particular polarization is perfectly transmitted through a transparent dielectric surface without any reflection. So if you have a dielectric surface and if you have an incident light which has been passed through and it gets reflected back in another plane which is not an incident ray plane, then it gets slightly polarized. So this particular angle will be called as an Brewster's angle. Okay, so this happens only in an dielectric surface, and in Brewster's angle always it will be partially polarized and not fully polarized. So the angle between the slightly polarized and the polarized will be of 90 degree. So this phenomena you should understand to see that how the light rays gets reflected. The same phenomena has been shown over here. Here it seems to be complicated. Here it feels the variation with respect to the refractive index. What happens if the refractive index is equal to 1, if it is greater than 1, and if it is greater than 1? So the refractive index will be equal to 1 in the core, and it will be greater than 1 in case of the cladder. So how the variation has been taking place in the rays of light, incident and reflected? The same thing is made you to understand here in simple concept how it gets reflected and incident. So it is mainly because of the Brewster's angle and reflection polarization phenomena. So this type of polarization effect and Brewster's angle remains the same irrespective of the type of Fabry-Perot cavity sensor we are using. It could be for the pressure measurement, temperature, displacement, or whatever. So this is about the type of sensors what we were dealing. So in the next class, we will just focus on the other type of sensors starting from Mach Zehnder interferometer. So now I will just end up for today's session. Any doubts currently? You are free to ask. Any doubts related to this, students? Are you people there?
Yes, ma'am. No doubts, ma'am.
Hope you understood.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so everyone type your name and USN in the chat room. I will call the attendance shortly. So today is 18th. Danush,
Yes, ma'am.
Mithun,
Yes, ma'am.
Mohan Ambal,
Yes, ma'am.
Sandesh,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, Srinidhi. Srinidhi is there. Sukrut,
Yes, ma'am.
Sriharsha.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so everyone please type your, yeah, Srinidhi, I have marked you the attendance. Everyone type your name and USN in the chat room. So we'll see you next in the next coming class. Until then, take care and have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah. Bye-bye.